And here we go. So welcome to the Learn2 webinar, how Learn2 developed an enterprise digital leadership program. Today I'm your moderator, I'm Tom Lyons. We have Doug Bolger, our CEO and founder with us. We have Carrie Millen, our master facilitator, and we have Carolyn Assalian, our English-French coach and facilitator. So who is Learn2? For those of you that are not familiar with us, I know a lot of people that are on this are very comfortable and familiar with us, but we're a learning organization that's been around for 30 years, winning awards on a regular basis for a unique approach that we have to learning. You can see Samantha and Kara below there. They were just in Florida receiving the OnCon Award for the top HR vendor. We run experiences and narrative immersions. That's what makes us unique in this industry. You're going to see that today. You're going to see how we try and take the learning and make it more doing, make it more about experience, and make it more about impact. I'm really excited to show you that. With that, I'm going to introduce you to our first speaker, Doug Bolger. Doug Bolger is our CEO and founder. He believes that every team can achieve inspired results by unlearning, optimizing, and creating best practices. At the heart of his award-winning approach to facilitation and design lies Doug's commitment to participant-centered and experiential learning sessions. Doug's conviction that anything is possible releases the power and energy inside participants and inspires them to lead differently. Thank you for joining us, Doug, and you have the mic.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you all here. You joined this industry because you believed in something, and like me, you probably believe that you can make a difference in people's lives and that people matter. And how we interact and support people in our organizations is really about unlocking this incredible potential that lives inside humanity. The reality is that most of us end up in organizations, and as an industry, our organizational approach has been to focus on how we can control rather than how we can lead. One of the beauties for me about the pandemic was that it actually caused us to stop and pause and look at where we were. And to see that some of our solutions weren't as effective as we had wanted them to be. They didn't produce what we needed. And much like that three-legged stool, there were some missings. And it helped us realize that training is broken. It does not unlock the human potential to the extent that's possible. And we've ended up in these boxes implementing programs and solutions that don't necessarily unlock that potential. Okay, so the pandemic arrived, and the pandemic helped us see that we had a lot of clients, and even ourselves, a lot of us were in a wait and see approach. And we started to see that budgets and staffing levels were under pressure. We saw that business units weren't as interested in the traditional solutions, and they felt like they wanted more value from us. And we discovered that perhaps training was really broken. For us personally, we've been on this journey toward virtual and remote for 3 years. As we start to scale globally, we start to say we can't be sending facilitators over into Europe to deliver 1 and 2 day programs or to deliver a series of 1 or 2 day programs. We needed to move to this virtual environment, and we're working together for 3 years to get to that place. Then I was on sabbatical during December and January, a way to relax and get super clear on how we were going to get there. Started to build the plan, and Tom and I noticed the beginning of January the spread of the virus across multiple countries, and realized that what we're planning for a September launch needed to move up radically to April 1st in the end. And we had to pivot all of our programs and pivot quickly. What I really want to do today is focus in on the fact that people are our greatest asset. Yes, they're also our greatest expense. And when we invest in people, we can actually transform those results. And we have to do things differently to get our leaders to invest in people so they see the return on their investment. So when we look at the numbers are pretty amazing. On the one hand, we have this view that learning actually helps close skill gaps. There is a benefit. Then as we start to move through, we realize that very few CEOs actually see the impact of the learning and talent programs, and that they saw even more rarely the ROI. So today we're going to share some insights into how we looked at this from 3 different perspectives. I'm going to share our strategy and our vision. Carrie will share how we pivoted on experience design, and Carolyn will share on the learner experience. What I want to do is really help you understand what the program is a little bit, so you can see how it ties in, because it's all got to live in reality. Our Orchestrate Impact program is for people who are new to the business or new to their role, new to new challenges, or getting prepared for a challenge or taking on a team. So it's enterprise level. So we have all of the enterprise level layers that exist inside the organization, right from that entry level interns and new grads up through professional levels, the individual contributors all the way up, and for the people leaders all the way up to the executives. So we have separate programs for each one, and luckily over the course of a few weeks we had to pivot all of them to digital. So this story is about how we did that. What's the program actually look like? It starts with some pre-videos now, some micro videos. We've taken all the teach out of the program. No one wants to be connected on a Zoom call or on a platform and be taught something. That day is gone, and all of any learning that needs to be done happens before the program. Each module has its own focus point. It's totally focused on practice and connection with the participants in the room, because we want to retain and in fact grow the social component. And then for application, we plug in impact. So we had impact coaching and accountability partners, and then we report on the impact of the program. Now, I will say this, stay to the end, and we're going to give you an opportunity to test drive a module so you can experience it firsthand for yourself, because there's something powerful in actually experiencing it and seeing how it's done. We're going to speak to it today, but I think a lot of you will have deeper questions and are going to want to experience how we did it firsthand. So here was our approach for redesign. Start with the hardest first. Everything began from a perspective of, if training's broken, then what are the big rocks that we have to solve first? And the 2 gaps that we're most interested in are the application gap. We've been solving that one for 30 years. That's where a lot of our awards come from. It's really shifting from that learning environment up into the performance environment where you have application. And that means tracking activity and the effectiveness of that activity. That's where the business unit starts to experience the value from the program, and since they're the ones that fund all of our lives, it's important that they experience that value. Then looking at that behavioral component and really understanding, are we actually moving the needle? And are we moving it in such a way that our leaders are ready, and that we've found the leaders who are ready, and that we've identified how to develop the people who aren't yet ready and determine where they are? Which brings us up to the value gap. One of the biggest opportunities from my perspective over the last 30 years I've seen is just really returning back to the business a clear economic impact. So in this new COVID world, those were the big rocks, is how do we deliver back that value and prove ROI, and more importantly for me is COI, which is the cost of inaction. Because quite often we go, this program's amazing, everyone should go through it, and the business goes, yeah, I don't really have any evidence of that. What's the evidence of $150,000 impact on the business for that couple $1,000s to put in up front, and you have to be able to prove that if you're going to protect your budgets and grow them. And more importantly, shift from a cost center to a profit center. So these were the big rocks, and this is how we went about doing it, and some of the reasons why we did it the way we did. Learning for us is really about three core things. It's really about thinking differently and doing that to actually impact the business. And right now, I think we're all realizing that either learning is a luxury and it's being cut, or it's the legendary part of the organization. Tom, maybe if you can put a poll in there now, just for you, what are the what's the most important thing from your perspective? Is it that ability to identify talent, get rid of some of the structural bias, triangulate, get additional data? Or is it to know if your talent is ready? That you have them in place for the role they're in or the next role? Or is it proving that business impact so that you have a team a few months from now or years from now and a budget to boot to go back and work? So each of those really were our big pieces that we were looking to solve with the learning, because there's one way to go like, oh, we've got an existing program, let's adapt it to digital. But we knew there were major gaps in the program, and look at that, 65% of you saying additional impact, improving that return. This has been the experience of pretty much every client we've done business with. It is really, really important, and we're going to share a bit of how we've done that, and then some of the results, because they're pretty spectacular. 3 different perspectives, and what we did is with each piece that we solved, it knocked the next piece down. So you got to understand, this is 30 years of doing it differently, constantly looking for that next piece that layers on the piece after it to be able to drive that result. Because with each piece we've connected, we can knock down something twice the size of it. And so this has been our exponential approach. So our why. One of the realities we realized was leaders don't actually see their people. We know about unconscious bias. We know that lots of us have put in e-learning programs and learning programs to get underneath unconscious bias. And the pull of meeting someone who likes the same sport, same bag, same approach, same look as you have is incredibly powerful. And unfortunately, if you have a bit of an accent or you come from a different part of town, we have some underlying biases. And those biases mean that often people don't even get an opportunity to reach the ladder or get to the next rung on the ladder. And so because the leaders are biased, and we all acknowledge that, we started to go, so is the system. The system itself that identifies talent and does all these pieces is also biased. So with all these biases, we had to get down to what are the core elements. And we brought it down to confidence versus competence. It's great. We get participants showing up who are super confident, who believe they can do anything, and they present themselves as really confident. The reality is they're often not competent. And what an enterprise level client is looking for is not that confident person. They're looking for the competent person. So how did we do that? We broke things down into challenges and step-by-step level challenges so that someone can work through the challenges to drive the behavior change and create the impact. And Carrie's going to share more about the challenges. The challenges support us because that gets us across the application gap, which means we get the behavioral outcome, and we apply the challenges to their impact. So in our programs, they produce a measurable impact from their participation in the program. That they can come back to their leader and say, here's what I did, here's the difference it made, because we all know that you learn to lead by leading, not from reading a book or looking. Second reason, second big hard thing that we want to solve was we want to answer the question, is talent ready? You look at this woman's face and you know she's ready, or maybe she's not ready. She might be ready, she could be ready, she looks mildly excited to go or not. This is the reality of where we are in business right now, is that we don't know which leaders are ready and what they're ready for. And when we get it wrong, we get people who get into leadership roles who rise to a level that they're unprepared for, they blank out, and they can do some damage to the organization and the culture. So the challenge is, again, help us understand their readiness, and the impact project lets us really see if they're ready. For example, in American Express, we ran the program, and a bunch of people who got added into the program to fill out the numbers ended up having the greatest impact. And all of a sudden, everybody thought differently about that group because they were a little bit different than the other participants. So taking that a step further, we added impact coaching. So the participants work one-on-one with an impact coach, specifically to identify how they're going to impact and to work through their behavior change to achieve the impact, track the impact, report the impact, and become known in the organization for their impact. Last and not least, we're big believers in immersive experiences. And anyone who's been through our Save the Titanic or our Lead the Endurance program, you know that going through those programs are transformative, and they set up a powerful application environment. Inside a narrative immersion, we get this deeply personal, emotional connection. We use music in Orchestrate Impact to make that happen. And we also spill oxytocin, that drug in the brain that gives us that warm feeling of being connected, because that's what we were feeling like we were missing in the learning environment in digital. We were like, how do we recreate that? And then we realized it's not just good enough to recreate it, we have to make it one better. How do we create all of these as virtual tools that create the same, if not better, relationships with people, lower friction, higher output, and forced ourselves through that lens? And again, Carrie and Carolyn are going to share more of that. So my request for you is join the conversation and join the community. It takes one of us, a crazy single person out on their own, doing their own thing. And that's in some ways me. I've been doing this now for 30 years, saying we have to prove the economic impact of learning. We have to get down to the behavior. We have to pull away from relying on the leader to produce all this information about the individuals so that we can identify our talent. We have to stop saying a leader's ready because they've completed a program. We have to get to the point where we go, that leader's ready. Look at the impact they're already creating. We can see that impact. And the more all of us together are able to do this, we're going to have a response to BIPOC and all of the movements that are happening right now as we start to unpack systematic bias that exists in our organizations. And I'd invite you to join that community, and let's make it happen.
Well said, Doug, and thank you for that. We do have a question for you. How long did it take to redesign for digital, or did you create this as an original digital course or program?
So the original, this course existed, and it's 30 years of building on top of it. The pivot to digital really needed to happen in about 3 weeks. We had identified the likelihood that things were going to change, so we had our platforms and everything in place. I had a sense that Zoom was going to collapse under the weight, and some people would require an enterprise level of security. So we had everything we needed, and we had transferred all of our assets over. And then the call came through, and we were able to not lose any clients. We pivoted all of our clients over to digital, and a lot of them have come back and said, like, we didn't even know this was possible in digital. And yeah, so in the end, 30 years, then down to a very focused few months. And then when it had to happen, we had 3 weeks.
Looks like that's all the questions for you now. So why don't we move on to the next section, which is design with Carrie Millen. So Carrie Millen is our master facilitator at Learn2. Carrie's purpose is to ignite authenticity and joy. She believes we all have the potential to create our ideal world. Carrie is a certified sales leader with a passion to impact a company's greatest assets, their people. With over 20 years of facilitation, leadership, and sales experience in a variety of industries, she helps leaders take complex ideas and simplify them to drive change and innovation. Carrie, the floor is yours.
Doug mentioned impact, and if you really want to think about it, if we had to high-level orchestrate impact, it ultimately is an impact experience, and we use the skills to drive that impact. Typically design, you design a bunch of training and hope for an impact. We are intentional about that impact. And as you saw earlier, getting people to think differently, do differently to drive the impact. And you'll see these themes come up over and over again with both myself and Carolyn as we go through. What we believe at Learn2, we are all leaders. People are our greatest assets, and leaders must deliberately focus on all sides of that triangle. The you side as the leaders, the peers and the stakeholders you have to deal with, and how do you work with, let's not say deal with, let's say work with, and the impact that you need to make in the business. Ultimately, you'll notice there's a Grammy in the middle, and we think of that Grammy as the value you bring to that organization. When you receive a Grammy, you have great value in the music industry. We want all of you to be able to articulate your impact, which will give you your own personal Grammy. And the themes that Doug brought up before directly connect here, both the thinking, the doing, and the impact. So how does this all come alive and orchestrate impact? There are 4 modules in Orchestrate Impact you saw earlier on Doug's slide, and you'll see by the album covers here, they actually hit all sides of that triangle. So you're seeing a common theme here. This will keep coming back over and over again. Not only are there the experiences that happen, there is also everything that happens outside of the virtual session or the digital session that we do. The pre-videos that are specific to the role and specific to the individuals that are coming through, that set them up so that the minute they step into the digital environment, we're off. You've got accountabilities and challenges that help us bridge that gap, and the Triad impact coaching that we'll dig even more into with Carolyn. So it was pivot time. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Probably the craziest time of our life, when I had half of my friends going, "This is so great, COVID is happening, I'm not doing anything." And it wasn't so much like that in our world, because we were working really hard to ensure that we had the continuity for our clients, because leadership didn't stop. If anything, the business needed us even more. We'll drop the different areas that were so important here are, as you saw, impact, you, and the peers. And we'll dig into one specific area about the design in each of these areas. So we'll put impact first, because as we said, we do the hardest first, we do the most challenging first, and you had to start with the end in mind. So impact. Doug talked about challenges. Well, it wasn't just go out and try something. We were very particular on how and where to execute specific skills. And we created a grid like this that's relevant for all the different skills that we have. And you actually, here's how it works. You start in the bottom left-hand corner if you are necessarily new to the role, like those new grads or someone new to a role. And you're going to try a tool if you've never seen it before for the first time. And then, almost like a board game, you move along. Now you're saying, well, I've been in business. Some of you may have been in the learning world for 20 years. I've got some particular skills. You're right. What happens here is, say I've been in a role for a while, I've been coaching for a while, I'm taking on a new challenge. Now I'll start, say, here. And what do I do next? I jump to the next row and start all along that next row. So you can go where you're specifically, your skill set is, and then level up from there. We meet you where you are and help you grow. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to impact, is impact needs a number. It needs a number. You declare your impact, you make assumptions, you do the work throughout the experience, and then you measure the results. That helps us fill that value gap. And coming up with that number is, sure, it's much easier if you're in sales or if you are, say, in finance. But if you're in HR or more of a customer service, how do you put a number beside it? And that's where that impact coaching works so well, is we help you, no matter what your role, client facing or not, come up with a number to quantify the value of what you are impacting. And then really money talks. And you saw from Doug talk about all the different cascading levels within a business. You're, say, an L&D leader. You need to have the numbers to convince and influence the leaders above you to not only invest in leading, also protect your staff. You need to also have the numbers to get your staff on board that this is actually going to make a difference. Then you've got rest of HR, your partners out there in the business, and you've got the participants to sell them on why they would even want to join in the experience that you're creating. There's that. Then there's also another layer, and that's when it comes to that talent layer we talked about earlier. The talent that when I go and apply for that new job, that I am able to articulate the value that I bring to the business. It isn't just about, oh, I've done my job. We were working with someone most recently in one of my impact coaching sessions, and she's back end, she works on all of the books. What she was able to do is say, based on what I have done and how I pivoted at the beginning of COVID, I've impacted the business over $700,000 worth. That if I hadn't pivoted, we would be way in the hole right now. That's the kind of stuff that gives us the goosebumps, and that's why we do what we do in this world. Finally, for impact is music. And I'll pause here for a second. Think of a favorite song. Well, how does that make you feel? Well, music has an incredible connection. It's not a universal language. It's music that connects us beyond language. And that is why it is our underpinning theme that connects you, like Doug was talking to you. It brings you into it. Here are some of the things some of our participants specifically say about music. It gets the endorphins going. It helps dopamine. It gets the oxytocin going when you are listening to music, you're talking about music. And it's a theme that is universal. Often we use sports themes when we're developing training, and we use a sports theme. Well, you know what? There's a whole lot of people that don't relate to sports. Or you use a cooking theme. Well, there's a whole lot of people that never get in the kitchen. Music, we all touch it in some way, from when your mom or dad used to sing you a lullaby all the way through. We use it in every symbol that we go through in our experience. As the Grammy I gave you talked about before, these themes come over and over again. So speaking of music, time for another poll. Tom, what song represents how you feel about virtual learning? We'll give you a moment to pick which one of these song titles, whether you know the song or not, relates to how you feel right now. Nice! Everything is awesome. I would be interested to see if we did this 3 months ago, would we have the same answer? It really is. And I don't know if you're like me, but I have finally gone through the grieving process that live training doesn't exist anymore. And I'm finally at acceptance in the last week or so. And so I think that's why we're at that place. And now we're like, now you're hungry to learn. How do we make it even better? So that's impact. Okay. Now that you're focused on the impact and some of the things we've done with the impact, let's look at the you. We really focused on this evolution to digital by focusing on the you, taking the spotlight off of us as facilitators and designers and putting it on the people. First way we did it was we cared about how they felt. We knew the content worked. Let's care how they feel. What is the emotional arc and the journey we'll take them on throughout the experience? And here are some samples from their first module. We also realized, because we were taking so much of teach out of the classroom, out of the digital classroom, we needed to simplify things. One of our solutions, we had been given a bunch of models from our client and we needed to combine them. So we locked Doug and I up in a virtual room together and we had to figure out ways to connect our different models. So we took actually about 5 different models and turned them into one model that does 5 different things. Think about that as a participant. How much easier is it to remember one thing, like a Swiss Army knife that has multiple uses? That's what we did. We also wanted to make sure that there was a universal language throughout the organization, and at the same time give unique experiences for each of the different kinds of cohorts. We do that by using the same concepts and changing the conversation. So a new grad, much more focus on myself, how I show up as a leader in my teams. A director, VP, or senior manager, more focus on business unit and business strategy. Same concepts being applied in different ways throughout the organization. Those are how we took these focus off of us and put it on the individuals. Now, the thing that tied it all together is the peers. We realized after doing this for years, myself, it's been 24 years in the learning industry, when as a provider of learning, we can't be the ones that ride in on the white horse, solve all the problems, and then ride out and leave you with your challenges. We needed a team. And that team ended up being your peers within your cohorts and your peers within the organization. So we rallied those teams together and we did a few things in the experience to make sure that those peers meshed together and fought the aliens at the end. Promise no aliens will be shown in this one. We use the 10-minute rule. Learning from your peers. We don't go any more than 10 minutes in our live experience without interaction. Here's a sample of what it looks like. We start our module even before the session starts, we have our module going. Come on in, we'll start pairing you up and you can get in the sandbox and get dirty. You're back into a main group. You're only back into that main group for 7 minutes before you're dumped in pairs. Back again, you're dumped in triads, into these breakout rooms where you are there with 1, 2, 3 other people and you're interacting, you're talking, you're sharing experiences, you're getting a little more vulnerable and your authenticity is coming through. They love breakout rooms, although Carolyn will tell you a little bit later about how do we make sure they work really well. We also have, you're learning in a digital space, you need to be able to lead in that digital space. And brain trusts are one of our sweet spots that clients absolutely love because they can solve problems. And the peers solve the problems. And you know what that means? They don't come up to leadership to solve problems. The peers figure it out and just go, oh, by the way, boss, this is what we're doing. It frees up such a great amount of time for the leaders, and it empowers and puts that ownership on the participants. And also when it comes to the peers, here's a sample of a new grad program that we ran in the last few weeks. The big circles show that in any one session, we could have a brain trust with 6 people, normally 3 accountability pairs together. You could do 2 pairs together. You could do a triad. You could do just a pair. They're interacting, and this does a lot of things. Social. It connects to that social which we miss from the regular part of class. It dissolves biases. You might have thought a certain thing about a certain person or a part of the business. You're getting that dissolved because you're learning about the real person. It increases efficiency because you now know somebody in that department, which could save you weeks and or months getting problems solved. And it just brings people together. So if you think about it and have to summarize it, When you're taking something from a live environment over to a digital environment, impact first, then put the spotlight on somebody else, and then head over to focus on peers and stakeholders. With that, Tom, I'll send it back to you.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, Carrie. We actually have a couple questions for you if you'd like to answer them.
Absolutely.
Does the music theme and songs translate in a multicultural workplace?
Thank you for that question. Yes, it does. It does. From that statement I said earlier, is music it's beyond a language. When we do our breakout rooms, we take our breakout rooms and we name them different instruments. We don't just name them what's in an orchestra. We name them in a variety of different things like sitar. We use a didgeridoo. We use a variety of different ones that bring in different cultures and show the diversity of the participants.
And the second question was, do entry-level positions do impact as well? So I'm guessing that's, do they understand impact, or do they do the impact activities?
They do, from the new grads on. If anything, those new grads are so driven in what they want to achieve. They are even more adaptable to taking on an impact. They look at that impact and they are able to directly see something that's wrong in the business. And by looking at something that's wrong, how could they do it more efficiently, better? They're able to actually get a specific impact throughout the program. And also, because we add the additional coachings, because clients often choose to have additional impact coaching after the 4 modules, they're able to stay on and continue to make that impact throughout months and even a year.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's move on to the next section then. That's all the questions for the moment. Oh, no, we have a question just popped up now. Sorry.
Perfect.
Do you see a difference in the willingness to embrace digital based on seniority and years of work experience? What are the challenges with senior folk?
I'm going to let Doug answer this because he had the most senior folk in his.
Yes. Interestingly enough, we had some who pushed back on virtual, and as we dug into it, we realized that it was more about COVID than it was about virtual. The level of uncertainty from COVID was really affecting some people, and they were feeling like, I can't handle everything and learn right now. So that was the first aha moment. Digital is kind of not our ideal platform, and the reasons it's not ideal is because people detest e-learning, and they've been so burnt by e-learning that they assume that it's that structured, I can't go anywhere, I'm stuck in this endless clicking cycle. And we had a lot of them who were actually pleasantly surprised by the fact that it wasn't teach oriented, because really if you got executives, you need no teach. It is all apply. It is all apply, all learning. And so we had moved all the teach out. Most of the executives actually went in and watched all the videos in advance, so they knew what was happening. They showed up with their impact ready, and they really appreciated the interactive nature and working on business problems, not theoretical case studies, but like, here's my problem, how do I get there? Here are my peers, these are their problems from across the business. So because the design was focused on those pieces, we got 100% net promoter score out of the senior execs last time we ran, and that was only a couple weeks ago that ended. So yeah, they're hesitant coming in, and now word has spread because they're like, you're going to make a huge difference. When you see the numbers for them, we had tens of millions of dollars of impact, things that were ideas that got fleshed out that really transformed the business through the impact coaching. So they really appreciate that one-on-one, and they like that it went from 2 days down to 8 hours, broken up over 4 different modules.
Great. And we have another question. With this transformation, how does it align with diversity for the needs, abilities of people with disabilities? Music for someone who is deaf, for example.
Yeah, everything that exists in the program operates on a couple levels, so you can see and hear most of the interactions. The technology that exists for deaf allows for complete interaction. We've seen, I think, a broader level of inclusion from this approach than any other approach, from simple things like business units that are further away from home office, or business units who are under severe cost constraints. So the inclusion, I think, has gone up profoundly, and I think there's going to be more space for us to go. Just going through and rethinking images and how we present and how we remove bias has led us into a whole new way of thinking. If you have individual leaders, we have a VR solution that is fantastic for helping a leader understand if they have someone who has different capabilities and how to acknowledge and understand that world. Highly recommend that solution. Just tag us and we'll get that over to you, because there's some really good tools in that space now.
Yeah, I remember that, Doug. That one was stunningly powerful.
It's incredible. You are blind for all intents and purposes, and you get to experience what it's like and understand it on a profound level. And it just changes the way you think, so it changes the way you lead. And so if you have team members of that nature, I highly recommend it.
Thank you for that. And you're getting lots of accolades back. Everybody's saying thank you for those answers. So that's fantastic. Okay, we've done vision, we've done design. Let's get into delivery with Carolyn. I'm going to share my screen here quick. Carolyn Assalian, she's our French and English coach and facilitator at Learn2. Carolyn is a performance strategist and business coach who elevates performance of organizations, teams, and individuals through strategy and leadership. Carolyn is a former athlete, coach, and 25-year experienced international executive with a proven track record. Her innovative leadership and work with high-achieving world-class teams transform the way thousands of athletes, coaches, and organizations prepare for and perform at high levels. Take it away, Carolyn.
Let's begin with the end in mind. So the picture you see in front of you is from our delivery last week, where we had 70 people in attendance. And you see the Learn2 team, we're all in our little 4 boxes. And what you see and what warms our heart, as Kerry mentioned, are the smiles and the testimonials that you see at the end of the delivery. So behind all of those smiles and testimonials, what you don't see are many hours of hard work, of sweat, of tears, of pivots, of challenges, and of failures along the way. And thankfully, what I'm just about to show you is not. I'm sure we all have stories and bloopers that we'd love to share, and there'll be another time for that. Okay, so learnings. We've promised you learnings. What you see are a number of learnings that we'd be happy to share with you at the end or on a call separately. What I'm going to focus on are really 3 key learnings. And as Doug mentioned, just to give you some context, we created the digital version in 3 weeks, and we've delivered it in both English and French. And no joke, our first delivery was on April 1st. So then we've now are in the process of delivering our second set of deliveries to cohorts, from new grads to executives in both English and French. So here are the 3 areas that we're going to focus on, our 3 key learnings. The first one comes from the side of impact. So, and we'll follow the same triangle as you've seen before. So leaders, whether you're a new grad or whether you're a senior executive, leaders want to get known. They believe in what they're doing and they want to get noticed and they want to progress within an organization. Yet they are exceedingly busy, and especially in today's world, they want to get noticed as quickly and have an impact on the business as quickly as possible. So what did we do? Yes, we aligned all of our tools, simplified all of the tools that Carrie and Doug have talked about, and we changed the way we've applied those tools for the leaders, okay? We focus not on doing more, because everyone was busy, so it's not on applying those skills and those tools more, but it was about really looking at how to do things that they're already doing, how to do things differently as leaders and as learners. So how could you lead differently? How do you behave differently? And how do you show your impact differently? Not more, but differently. So this way, by learners doing more, by doing differently, they actually have more time to focus on their impact on the business. Okay? And here's the tool that was used. So this template is all about how do you do differently, how do you lead differently, and how do you demonstrate your impact in speaking in terms of economic impact on the business in order to show, as a learner and as a leader, to show your impact, your value to the business. So this template helps leaders to identify what they want to focus on for their impact, where they want to have an impact, how do they measure it, and what actions and behaviors they are committed to taking to achieve that impact. All right, so here's an example in this case. The example is from a leader we had in the program. They're responsible for managing a grievance process between management and unions. So they've identified the impact, their metrics, and their actions in order to achieve their impact. So, as I may have mentioned, this is not the template we began with. What we found when we first introduced the concept of impact statement, what we found were participants and learners and leaders were very clear on what they wanted to achieve for the business, what they wanted to impact, what they wanted to change, what they wanted to improve, whether it was a change in process. They were very, very clear about that. And they were also clear about what actions should they take to achieve that impact. Okay? What they were less focused on is how they showed up as a leader, how they would lead differently. Okay? And what, in the first round, what they didn't do as well is identify what the metrics or what the measures are to demonstrate their impact. Okay? And so on a personal note, for me, coming from the sport world, that I almost took for granted, because all you do in the sport world is you measure everything. And coming from the Canadian Olympic world, we knew what our targets were. We knew in order to be a top 3 winter nation at the Olympic Games, we knew we needed to win 35 medals. We knew that those 35 medals had to come from these 8 sports. And we know that in order to have 35 medals, we needed to have a pool of potential medalists, double of that, 75 potential medalists. And then from that pool of 75 potential medals, we can tell you what the conversion rate needed to be. And even more importantly, everyone on the team knew exactly what measurement and what metric they would have to demonstrate to show their impact on the team and on performance. Okay? So this is as much as we can. And this is going to be about you doing. So as opposed to me telling you, let's take a couple of minutes and let's have you go through your own impact statement. We'll walk you through it. I'll ask you 3 questions, take a couple of minutes and reflect on those 3 questions. So first, your impact. In your current role, what do you want to have an impact on? What are you passionate about? What do you want to fix? Is there a product you want to introduce? What do you want to do? What inspires you to get up in the morning and come in front of your computer and have an impact? Okay? Then, how will you measure your impact? How do you know when you've succeeded? What are you going to measure and how are you going to measure? Is it productivity or efficiency? Is it revenue? Is it cost savings? Is it employee retention or customer satisfaction? How will you measure it? Then, what actions and behaviors are you committed to doing differently to achieve your impact? As a leader, how will you lead differently? Will you take more risks? Will you change to a growth mindset? Will you give more feedback? Will you want to receive more feedback? Okay. Then, with your peers or your stakeholders, with whom, what actions are you going to take? Do you have to be aligned with certain key stakeholders? Do you have to get certain key stakeholders on side? Think about that. So, hopefully over the last minute or so, you've just started to get a sense of how to create an impact statement. And as Doug says, we do this through Triad Impact Coaching. Again, it's not about doing more, it's about doing differently to show your impact. And the impact that our first round of cohorts have demonstrated is right there before you. Okay, here's a summary. You have the cohorts ranging from new grads to executives. And why is it important? Well, from a participant perspective, from a learner leader perspective, what you want to do is show the metrics, show your values, show your ROI so that you get noticed and you get known as a leader to be promoted within the business. And from a corporate and enterprise level, why is that important? Well, as Doug mentioned earlier, it provides you with data so that you can help identify the talent and helps you determine the readiness for advancement of those leaders. All right, so having an impact statement, we all know, is not enough to delivering the impact statement. Leaders need support. And the support that we've created through this program is through accountability partners and impact coaching. So our second key learning, our second of 3 key learnings, is around impact coaching. Coaching was integrated into the program, okay, to support each other achieve their impact statement. And you can see here by this table exactly how many times leaders and learners applied the coaching model, Grow coaching model, so that they did differently. They behaved differently. What they did is they told, and they sold less, and they listened more through coaching. Okay, and this applied from new grads right through senior executives. Carrie mentioned brain trusts, and you'll see how many times the brain trusts were taken and applied to solve real business issues. And you also see a number of our other tools and skills, how participants and leaders and learners applied those tools. So you see by those coaching numbers, at least, that it's the #1 application tool. So you can see the participants and learners and leaders saw the value and applied it more so than any other skill. And the research backs up the value of coaching. And we knew that in order to help participants and leaders achieve the impact statement, we knew that they needed more impact coaching. So by eliminating teach time, by reducing other teach elements, we've pivoted to introduce Triad Impact Coaching. What's Triad Impact Coaching? Well, it's where the partners in an accountability partnership meet with an impact coach to help do 3 things. Firstly, to help clarify and work on their impact statement. Secondly, to help apply some of the skills and the tools of the program into their day-to-day world. And thirdly, we say, okay, what else do you need? What other challenges and obstacles do you find are barriers for you to achieving your impact statement? The response is our number 3 learning. What we heard most common from new grads before even discussing impact coaching, before even discussing their impact statement, these new grads who are bright, articulate, passionate, energetic, and engaged young leaders, what they told us they wanted to talk about more than anything else, they wanted to figure out how their voice could be heard. How do I use my voice so that people could listen? And that's our number 3 learning. So what we did is we've used 2 tools for both new grads and senior executives, and we got new grads to apply that same tool to help them use their voice more. And that same tool was used with executives to ask the question around their listening. How well are they listening? Okay. So that's how we've simplified. We've used the 2 tools so that not only are you using your voice and you're using your listening. So before turning things over to Tom, I just want to close off by saying Doug, Carrie, and I have all facilitated this Orchestrate Impact program, and we are so thrilled with the recommend rate. So with that, I'll turn things over to you, Tom.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. That was fantastic. We do have a few questions for you, and we're moving into the question and answer period. So I'm just going to share this slide that I've been waiting to share all day. Here we go, because I love that dog. Okay, so questions for you. First, did you have any struggles with Zoom or your LMS or whichever platform you were on?
Sure, and one of us could answer that question.
So some clients can't use Zoom because it's not enterprise secure, and because it wasn't early on, it got knocked out. So we had a backup platform that is enterprise secure that works really effectively for those clients. Our main challenge with Zoom was that it was just different every day. You never knew what you were going to get when you got up in the morning. So one of the protocols we put in place was complete system reboot an hour before you went live, and you had to update Zoom. So we couldn't control if the participants had updated Zoom, but we could control if we did, and Carrie built that protocol, and then we follow it to today. Like I rebooted before we did this today, and it's made a big difference.
How did you avoid oversimplifying, especially with the same content for different levels of management?
I'll go. It's like, you don't have that same interaction that you do in the live class here. How do we oversimplify? We take us so much out of the picture. So there's a model. You've got that 1 minute share, and we put them in it so they're able to have the discussion around what's most relevant for them. So if one of our senior people that we're working with is like, I've got to figure out how not to get 700 people fired, and somebody else is, I need to figure out how to work with Sally, that same tool is able to be used for all of them, and they make it their own. We get out of the way.
Yeah, that's probably our biggest aha. Is in the old world, it was always like tell, share, do, like all of that is gone. It's their world that matters. What are their challenges? A really popular piece of this program is handle resistance, and how you actually embrace the resistance. Well, the kinds of challenges that a new people leader are dealing with and the kinds of challenges that executive are dealing with are radically different. The process of dealing with them is the same. So they bring in their context and they operate inside their context, and they love that.
Did you have problems with audience retention with online delivery?
I don't think so.
No. No, and to the point where if there was a participant that had to miss one of those module deliveries, they would ensure, like they would call us up, see where they could participate in another module. They did not want to miss anything because, as Doug said, it was really, and Carrie said, it was focused on them, not on us.
I think too, we started out, first pivot was to 1 hour long modules. They came back and asked for longer. They wanted longer. Then the feedback was open it 15 minutes before and hold it open 15 minutes after so we can meet with our accountability partners attached to the experience. We seem to be maxing out about that 2.5 hour mark before you have to bring in a DJ and have like a open the box and surprise what's there to kind of keep people energetically involved. But the retention has been high. And to Carolyn's point, I was blown away by executives who were like, I'm going to be 15 minutes late and I've already arranged with someone else to bring me up to speed. Can I please get the video I missed last week and I'm going to watch the video. I watched the video. I want to practice. Are you available to coach me through this next piece? It's like it's such an incredible commitment to the learning, I think, because it wasn't focused on us. That old model of like super smart person up front of room who knows everything. Everyone else has empty cups and we pour knowledge into them. That model does not fly in this space.
Yeah, and I think it's another good point too is the velocity that we did this at. We did a deliver feedback change a lot, right? Like it was like, oh, that didn't work. Change, and it was immediately changed. It was updated and we moved on to a different approach. The feedback from participants is what allowed us to get to such engagement and retention so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they commented afterward like, oh, I noticed that you're not, like Carrie, one of our big learnings was we wanted to like have certain things scripted out. And they were like, yeah, this don't script and record stuff. Just, we want the human. So, it was there and then next week it was gone. It was back to us again. Because they don't want anything that smells like e-learning.
What they really want is they want us to just come alive and be able to talk about DJs is do stuff like this. And being able to throw, there's nothing like a dancing pineapple.
Yeah, it's true.
I have a lot of people asking about Orchestrate Impact. So I think we'll move into the last portion of it and then we're going to stick around for some more questions because we do have more questions coming in at this time. Mm-hmm. Doug alluded to something special for everybody, and I am going to get into that right now for you. Orchestrate Impact is a fantastic program. I think you guys have seen a lot of what makes it special today. What we wanted to do for everybody that stuck around today and is interested is invite you to receive one of the modules of Orchestrate Impact complimentary for yourself and a small team. The reason we do that is we pride ourselves on creating experiences. We pride ourselves on our narrative immersion, and just like any experience, just like any form of immersion, you have to see it to believe it. You have to go through it. We've spent a lot of time today telling you about it and showing you examples about it, but that is not the same thing as going through it. And there's a lot of value. It's very powerful to be able to go through the experience yourself. So what we want to do is offer everybody an opportunity to go through to one of the modules. We're going to do it exactly the same way as if we were setting this up for you as our client. You'll get to talk to Doug, Carolyn, Carrie. They're going to do a design call with you ahead of time to make sure that we really hit the points that need to be hit for your team on that module. Right. And then we'll go through the whole thing with you. We'll set up the date to go through it with your team, and your team will go through that module just like it was a program you're running within your organization. Obviously, it's just the one module, so it gives you a taste of what's going on, but I think it's a really important thing for you to do. How do you take advantage of that? That is probably the question that you have next. And it's really easy. You can leave a message in the chat. You can leave a message in the question and answer. You can email Samantha at learn2.com. She'll get it organized for you. She'll set up the appointments, arrange everything that needs to happen and make sure this goes smoothly for you. You can call us at the phone number,
reach us on any social media channel. You can reach us on www.learn2.com. We have a live chat there. If you want to get a hold of us, there is a way to get a hold of us. We promise you that. You just have to reach out to us, and we will make sure that happens for you so you get a chance to get a really good experience of what's going on. Okay, with that, we have time, I think, for some more question and answers, don't we, everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So one of the questions we have from the group is, was the coaching one-on-one or is it in peer groups?
Ooh, good question. Carolyn, you should feel.
Yes. So
You can be all excited.
you can see my face. Yeah. We're all such a firm believer in coaching. So there were a number of things. They practice with each other, one-on-one, applied it with their team, and then we were there to support them. So the impact coaching was done both one-on-one with us and with their accountability partners. Okay, so what we've learned, we started off by having just open office hours. 1 hour a week, we're available. If you need any support, let us know. That was actually one of our pivots and one of the things that didn't work so well. Then when we offered coaching, we offered optional coaching one-on-one. That worked really well. So we are offering as part of this program one-on-one and or accountability partner coaching.
And I think what we love so much about the accountability partner, so Triad coaching, if Doug was the coach, Carolyn and I are getting a bit of coaching from Doug, and more than anything, he's coaching us on how to be a coach to each other.
Yeah, I think the beauty of the impact coaching is the triads create an organizationally based support system rather than a vendor-based one. And yes, we do vendor-level support all the way through until they're good to go. But for a lot of our clients that have been in for a few years, we get participants coming back who have been through the program who want to coach other participants, so you get that savings, and then we do escalation level coaching with that group, or we develop that group to take it on. So as much as possible, you want those supports to be internal, because then you claim all those wins and they're all yours.
And one more thing, just maybe coaching, when people have a different idea of what coaching really is. Some people, some leaders that we get into the program would tell us, yeah, I coach all the time. I tell people what to do. So we have to change it. No, that's actually not coaching. You've got to help and question and guide. So even just asking about coaching, it's not clear to everyone exactly what coaching is.
Yeah, great point. Was there a best number of the people in the breakout sessions?
Carrie, that's your
I'll
baby.
take that one. Yes. The sweet spot. Yes. Sweet spot is 5 to 6 for group coaching.
Yeah.
And group work in a breakout. Anything more than 6, you get a passenger or 2. And that passenger or 2, not only, well, it's fine if there's a passenger or 2, but then they affect the energy. And well, Bob can sit there and not ask any questions, then I'm going to sit here and not ask any questions, and you don't have that engagement. There is no place to hide with 5 or 6. Obviously, pairs and triads, completely interactive, and that 5 or 6. And with one of our other pivots we've added in is that we let them know that we'll be dropping into breakouts when we send them into breakouts. That keeps everybody honest, because admittedly, sometimes they get to a breakout and go, what are we supposed to do? So we've had to add multiple layers to ensure that that breakout is actually doing what they're supposed to do. It's on a slide. It's said verbally. It's in their participant manual. Most often we'll send a message out to the breakouts, just a reminder, this breakout is about X. And when you come back, you'll be reporting on Y. And so keeping all of those and the pop-ins keeps them honest, keeps them participating, and they come back and they share the what they learned from that experience.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why we also have the other platform, because Zoom, we can go so far, and our other platform, we can go further. And it's mainly in just the structure and support for the learners in the breakouts, because then you can have, like you saw that screen with 70 of them, all then in breakouts, all coming back in together, and it being a highly effective learning experience because they're in control and they know what to do. So we've got to give them that scaffolding to support them getting up to those best practices.
It looks like we're slowly getting to the end. Some of them have been answered as you've been talking, which is great. Let's see.
Nice forehead.
I think we answered this. I'm going to toss it out anyway. I'm going to toss it out anyway, just in case. Did you find some things did not work in digital compared to when you ran in the analog real world?
I would say one thing that we found is go to your flip chart right here and report back, which we love that activity when it was in classroom, and just using it within the functionality of Zoom didn't work very well. We then started to add additional tools out there. For instance, we use idea boards. Same concept, except for we're all on the same board together, which brings it alive more like our graffiti walls that we create. We're all in there creating at the same time, and we have a record of it. So initially just go to a breakout and come back and report was lame. Adding this additional technology was able to bring it to life, and we were no longer limited by what we thought Zoom could do. We were now, I would like to do this, and guess what? There's a platform out there that can help you do it.
Yeah, I think for me it was participant manuals. I was shocked by how many pivots we had on participant manuals, because participant manuals are so critical to our process because it's about the individual. It's not, you know, pushing content at people. It's about having the content and applying it. So being able to capture and write in your notes and go back and refer to things from module 1 into module 2, and then, you know, having the screen organized the way it is, and then having the participant manual and getting all of those pieces worked out. We pivoted a lot on participant manuals.
And it was a struggle too on screen size, because in the real world, you know, they're at a table, you know that they have this space for the participant manual, that you know you have your space at the front, but they may have a single monitor. Another person may have 2 monitors, another person may have 3 monitors. Some of them are on small monitors, big monitors, right? That was a challenge as well. I remember that.
Yep.
Okay, I think that is probably all the questions that we have. Thank you everybody for showing. Thank you for so many of you sticking around the whole time. That is absolutely amazing. I see lots of people here wanting to touch base with Doug and to touch base with Samantha. So we really appreciate that. We're going to enjoy talking to all of you. Other than that, have a great day. We're going to sign off, and goodbye.